host of the Total Woman Summit. Thank you for joining us for our virtual workshop series. We have been having a blast. You are certainly in for a treat. This afternoon, we are talking to a serial entrepreneur, someone who has made her business and connecting across the globe. We're going to be talking about how to shift and pivot to drive revenues for your business. So without further ado, let me introduce our special guest for this afternoon's conversation, Joanna Falkner. How are you, Joanna?
Hey there, I am doing good. How are you this afternoon?
Oh, really well. We're so excited to have you.
Thank you so much. It was an honor to be asked to be a part of this, and I'm pumped. I am excited, and I'm ready to share my journey and hopefully learn something and give something back at the same time.
Absolutely, and we're looking forward to that as well. So before I go any further, I am going to ask our listening audience to do us a favor and drop in chat if you can see and hear both Joanna and I. Okay. Okay, sounds like they can hear us. Okay, thank you so much, Vanette. We appreciate you. So let's get into it, Joanna. Wait, for those of you that are new to the Total Woman Summit experience, the Total Woman Summit was created to empower women through education, connection, and community. And in commitment with our education, we want to make sure that we're talking to you about the topics that matter the most. And there is no time like the present in the midst of a global pandemic, which has required all of us to shift and pivot. So I thought it was very important for us to talk to you now while you had the time, we have the information, and we have the experts. So it is a perfect storm for us to have this conversation. So, Joanna, I want to make sure that they understand the rules of engagement for this talk. Number 1 through 20, we're talking to you and you're talking to us. This is an exchange of information. You don't have to wait until the end of the conversation to drop us your questions. Use the Q&A feature to drop your questions. You can drop them anonymously if you like, or if you're feeling particularly bold, you can drop them in the chat function for everyone to see. You get to choose. It's up to you. Also, please, 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 if you need further clarification on something that she says or something that I say, don't wait, ask. There is no bad question. There is no stupid question. We guarantee, actually, if you're thinking it, someone else wants to ask it too. So make sure you do it. We want you to walk away from this fully informed. That's why we're taking the time to do this, have this conversation. So those are the rules of engagement. So let's get to it. Joanna, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So as you mentioned, I am a serial entrepreneur, and it took me a long time to walk in that title. So maybe I can get into a little bit of that later in the conversation, but as you mentioned, I do own and run several independent businesses. And my primary role, though, how I see myself is as a creative problem solver. So every business that I launch, every business that I'm involved in solves a problem. There are some passion projects in there, you know, from now in between time, but for the most part, I'm a creative problem solver. And I have been, running businesses or things that look like businesses since I was in college. I recently launched a new enterprise. We'll talk about that. It was the outcome of me shifting from my primary business, which is called the China Connect, where I connect entrepreneurs and business owners to vendors and suppliers in China through tours, through sourcing projects and things of that nature. And of course, all of that came to a screeching halt when the pandemic started back in January. But before I was even taking entrepreneurs to China, I am a wedding dress designer by trade. So that is initially how I got started working with international vendors. Is I reached out to have a team start developing and creating my designs in Vietnam initially. Then I moved over to working with those in China. And I just am a creative problem solver with a little bit of ambition and a little bit of that don't stop, won't stop attitude. That is just who I am and who I've been for the past, 15, 20 years as an entrepreneur.
Wow, that is such an amazing story. And she is being very modest and humble, which we appreciate, but we believe in celebrating women in this forum. So listen, you don't have a little bit of ambition. It takes a certain amount of drive, resiliency, business savvy to run businesses, not just locally, but you add in that whole international complexity to it. That is something that is to be applauded, and we want to glean from your wisdom. So I want to make sure we have all of these businesses. We have the China Connect. We have Healthcare Now, which we'll talk about later. You are a wedding dress designer by trade. What's the name of your wedding dress business?
It is Jalona Marie Bridal.
And what's the website for that?
Sure, it's Jalona Marie Bridal. It's Jalona Marie, Marie, bridal.com. And we specialize in custom couture wedding dresses.
Wow.
We consider ourselves an affordable luxury. And I have a team that I work with here in the US and in China that creates and brings these gorgeous ideas to life. And there's one more business that we didn't talk about. This one started as a passion project, but it has now turned into an actual enterprise, and it's called the Sparkle Market. And as I have traveled to China back and forth, if you have never been, or if you don't have any idea, China is chock full of markets and all of these different places where you can go and buy trinkets and things that sparkle and inexpensive things that you can create marvelous items out of. So as I was traveling, I started finding these really cute items, and I'm a planner girl. I love books, and I've always wanted to decorate my books. So the Sparkle Market came out of my desire to just want to see my books sparkle and have some decor on them. So that's what we do at the Sparkle Market, is we create gorgeous planner bands and book decor. So as I said, it started as a passion project, but my sister and I now run that company. So
let's just put this in perspective, people. Jalona, and she has a podcast. She hasn't even said that either, but she also has a podcast. So what's the name of that podcast?
The podcast is called the China Chat Podcast, and it is a platform where I can educate and entertain those that may be interested in sourcing from China, traveling to China for business. Perhaps you have a business and you're wanting to expand your product lines. Probably maybe you want to increase your profit margins or find different suppliers to diversify your supply chain. And we talk about what it's like to do business in China as a solopreneur. That is an area that I'm really passionate about. Business owners like you and myself, and maybe a lot of those listening, we don't have large teams. We don't have large deep pockets and angel investors that are backing our businesses. A lot of what we do is bootstrapped out of our own savings. Perhaps we're still working full-time jobs and we have businesses that we're trying to grow. And so when you're a smaller business, there is a tendency for us to be overlooked by larger conglomerates, those that want to do business internationally. So my niche is to specialize on those small business owners. And that's what we do with the China Connect and the podcast. We bring those small business owners, those that have traveled to China, those that are interested in going, those who have been on tours with me, or those that are already working with China suppliers. We bring them on the podcast, talk about their experiences, their products, their lessons learned. And it's really just a fun way to educate, give back, and allow people to ask questions and be a part of the behind the scenes conversation and experience of what it's like to source from China or other Asian countries.
Wow. So let me put this in perspective. So if you need a wedding dress design, you should call Jalona. If you need health gear or protective equipment, you should call Jalona. If you want to talk about doing business, you should call Jalona. If you want to design a book, you should call Jalona. So essentially what we have found, the answer to all of our questions today, and if you want to talk about how do you do business internationally in Asian countries, which is where most manufacturing is done, right? It's done, big businesses are using them to manufacture their products, all of that. So if you want to do that, you should call Jalona. So if you don't get anything else out of this conversation, you should call Joanna.
Thank you. Facebook ads with that promotion. That was
Yes,
amazing.
absolutely. I'll be happy to report that for you. So let's get into the meat of this, Joanna. So how I came to know about you. Hi, Pumpkin. So yeah,
That's
so
ad.
we're working moms. So we listen. Hi, baby. How you doing? So this is what we know. We know that we're in the middle of a global pandemic, right? And it has caused all of us to have to think about our businesses differently. I am a management consultant. I've had to re-engineer my business and think about ways to do my business differently so I can remain profitable. Many of those things were maybe just a small percentage of my business that I did, but I had to shift and pivot to remain relevant and to remain profitable to continue to drive revenue streams. So those things, percentages of my business have had to grow. Some of them have contracted. Some of them have, and some of it has been amazingly fun to think about new ways that I can solve problems creatively. So let's talk about it from that perspective first, Joanna. You found yourself in the middle of a global pandemic like everyone else, and you had to think about a different way to do your business. So talk to us about that and how you ended up with Hope Gear now, your newest sort of baby.
Yeah, absolutely. So as we discussed a little bit earlier, the platform that I operate a lot of my enterprises from is from the China Connect. So I typically have sourcing projects that are ongoing, and I have tours that are planned twice a year. So we had one planned for March. We had just gotten back from a tour in September, October. And so all of our work streams were really targeted toward advertising the tour, booking the tour full out, and starting to work on those sourcing projects and onboard those clients. Well, I've been dealing with COVID for a little bit longer than most because if you recall, it really hit China right before the holidays. And the way that our payment structure is set up for the tours, we've got a big chunk of the tour payment that comes in right before the end of the year. And then the final payments are due in January. So we started getting these rumors and whispers of this really strange virus. I have a team that's on the ground in a city called Yiwu in Guangzhou in China. And right before Chinese New Year, which is mid to late January, they started raising the alarm like, hey, there's something going on here. We're not really sure what's going to happen. So it quickly spread, and those quarantines quickly happened, and business just stopped. So I had to make a decision. I could either, because the world really wasn't aware of the coronavirus at the time, I could have either just said, okay, I'm just going to let this play out, see how things happen, or I could make the decision to lead with authority with my customers, my clients, and let them know that there is something going on. We don't really know yet, but just a heads up. So that's what my team and I decided to do. So we started communicating with our customers and clients really early, back in January. We started recording podcast episodes, publishing those, and by February, it was a full-blown pandemic, and I was already impacted because I wasn't comfortable accepting those payments for the March tour, not knowing if China would even be accepting visitors. So I immediately felt the financial impact because I couldn't get those payments in. And even with sourcing projects, we were in the middle of several projects and production was delayed. We couldn't get the team back in the office to communicate. No one was able to continue their projects. So the final payments, the midpoint payments for those were stopped as well. So I was without income from that business. And even on the bridal side, weddings weren't being canceled yet, but wedding dresses were being impacted. The timelines when we could get them back were being impacted. So I thought, I need a drink. I just need to stop and have a glass of wine to process all this. So once I realized that this was going to impact my business for months and months to come, I did just that. I took a break. I took a 2-week break just to collect my thoughts and figure out what my next steps were going to be. And there were 3 key motions that I did, 3 key things. Now that I look back, I didn't quite know it at the time, but these were just my entrepreneurial reflexes kicking in. So the first one, as you said, thinking about other ways that you can spin the networks that you already have, the skill set that you already have, looking at those things that you already own. How could I leverage those to create something that could bring in some income? Our moms used to always tell us, honey, you got to use what you got. Well, that was my first thought. How can I use what I have in order to solve a problem that may have nothing to do with China? It didn't need to have anything to do with China because we didn't know what was going to happen there. So that was the first thing I thought. And by this time, it was February, March, they were getting over the hump of their pandemic, and it really was just starting to spread to other areas. And the second thing that I had done was I just kind of surveyed the market. I did that assessing the landscape activity that we all must do as entrepreneurs before we put our energy and effort into any project. Look around and see what the need is. What is it that people need right now in the middle of a pandemic? It's not wedding dresses, and it's certainly not sourcing new projects or really starting new businesses. So what I did know was that it looked like this pandemic was going to become a huge thing. And I just kind of followed the patterns of what China had just gone through. And I knew that every single one of my employees, everyone that they knew now needed to have personal supplies of PPE. It wasn't just the hospitals or your rehab centers that needed these protective equipment. It was everyone, regular individuals. So I thought, okay, what resources do I already have? Going back to point one to point number two, which is to solve a current problem. And then thing number three that I did, motion number three that I did, I prayed about it. I assessed my risk. I looked at the dollars that I had to spend, because remember, I didn't have any income coming in from the end of December. And I said, how much can I risk? What can I stand to lose? I didn't want to go bankrupt. I didn't want to go to zero, but I knew I could afford to put a little bit of income into this new problem that I was solving in order to get ahead of the demand. And that is how the business Health Gear Now came into view. I must mention, though, it wasn't all me. My wonderful husband is a hospital administrator. And so he had a perspective that helped me to understand and narrow down exactly what people would need. He understood the inner workings of how logistics happened for healthcare systems. And I just copied those, that model for individuals. So he was a huge help into getting things off the ground.
Wow. Wow. That's a lot. So I love the fact that you said that you were vulnerable. So all of this comes back from doing a SWOT. And if you've been rocking with us through this entire workshop series, you keep hearing me talk about, with each one of our guests, really doing a SWOT analysis. And again, that is, I put all of this in chat, so you should be taking pictures of what I'm putting in chat. Is the S is really doing an internal assessment of your strengths, doing an internal assessment of your weaknesses, doing an external assessment of your opportunities and your threats. And so to dial this into what Jalona just said, her strengths were her ability to solve problems. So that's always what you should be thinking about as an entrepreneur, as a business owner. What problem are you going to solve in the world? That's the same way that I think about my business, and I don't do bridal wear. I don't do personal protective equipment. I don't do any of that. I just solve problems. Then I think about, what are my weaknesses? Those are, what opportunities or gaps do I have? Is there some knowledge that I need? Is there a new circle of influence? Is there a new relationship? What do I need to be able to do this business? For me, I'll give you an example. I do business with municipalities. I cannot do business with municipalities if I do not have umbrella policies, or if I do not have a certain threshold of insurance to cover me, because they won't do business with me if I don't have those. So when I knew I wanted to pursue those types of contracts, I had to make sure that I had all of those things in place. Exactly. Then what were some opportunities? She said She, after landscaping the environment, assessing the environmental landscape externally, she recognized that the opportunity was going to exist across the board for people to need personal protective equipment. She leveraged her network. Her husband, in this case, he's in her network too, because he has skill sets, but he leveraged his knowledge. So don't take for granted the folks, the intellectual property that exists in your circle of influence. And then she examined the threats. And so, you know, what were the risks? How much money should she spend? How much was she willing to lose? That's assessing the risk. And we talked about that a lot yesterday in our money segment. So I wanted to make sure, Joanna, that they had sort of those practical applications so they can understand what that looks like. So when you talk about assessing how much money you were going to put in there and assessing your resources and your risk tolerance, sort of how did you know what that would be for this new product? Because you talked about you were doing bridal, you were doing custom bridal gowns and books, but not really doing this sort of equipment. How did you do that sort of assessment?
So I'll just tell you the numbers, what makes me comfortable and what made me uncomfortable. I am not a numbers person, and my husband will tell you that. He's like, honey, you are not a numbers person. So I accept that, and I live and walk in that. So I am not being a numbers person. I did not sit down and do a detailed risk analysis and understand my, level of income and numbers and risk and all of that. I didn't sit down and put anything to paper. I just looked at my business bank account and I said, okay, I have this much money and my comfort level in my business bank account is $5,000. If I can play with all the rest and not get below $5,000, that allows me to pay bills for several months, pay my contractors for several months, and keep my websites up and keep the wheels turning. I didn't want to be below 5,000. And for some people, that number's 50. For some people, it may be 10. For me, it was $5,000. And so I took the rest and I said, okay, this is the amount of money that I know I will have tied up in product, tied up in inventory for a number of weeks. This is what I can expect to bring in. And these are the prices that I'm paying and the prices that I will set my retail prices at. Now that's where my husband came in because he's the spreadsheet guy. So he put all that in spreadsheets for me. And I'm a gut person, an intuitive leader, an intuitive entrepreneur. And it works for me, maybe because I have him to kind of balance out the number aspect of it. But I went with what I felt was comfortable for me to lose. And that was the amount of money I could tie up in this venture and not get below that $5,000. Does that kind of put it in perspective? Okay.
Yeah, that puts it in perspective. And everybody has their own comfort number, right? I have my own comfort number. My number for risk is somewhere between $5,000 and $10,000 too, right? Because you got to spend money to make money. Whoever told you didn't, that's because here is this is one of the 6 principles of money. One of the 6 principles of money is the higher the risk, the higher the reward, which means in Berkeley, the lower the risk, the lower the reward. And the reward in this perspective, we're talking about sort of the return on your initial investment. What are you going to get back on your investment? So, Joanna, so that's so far off from the product that you were actually doing with the designer bridal wear. So how did you know which vendors or what partners to pursue to be able to get, because you're selling the 3-ply mat. I've ordered from her. I support women-owned businesses people, and you will be able to support too before we get off this call. But I ordered the mask, I ordered the plastic face shield, and the gloves. I ordered the gloves that she has them in black, and I wanted some black gloves too, mainly because I thought they were cool. But so tell us, how do you know that somebody that makes bridal gowns for you, custom bridal gowns, can also now, how do you go about finding these new sort of product vendors, people that can supply these things?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is my absolute favorite thing to talk about. It gives me goosebumps to talk about sourcing and finding suppliers. But your question goes back to my point number one, which was using what you got. And because I'd had all of these years of experience importing products, sourcing from suppliers, vetting, verifying, identifying which suppliers really could provide the capacity, which ones were just kind of middlemen or trading manufacturers, I just have a spidey sense, if you will, that I've developed over years, where just like you could go into an organization and having one conversation with them, you can write a full proposal and address every single pain point that they have. And they're like, oh my God, we need to hire you. That's kind of where I am in my expertise with sourcing. So, but to bring it down a level, I already had existing relationships, but not with medical suppliers though. So what ended up happening in China was they too realized that there was going to be this huge surge in demand for PPE. And one thing that China is amazing at, no other country on the planet can compete with China in terms of velocity and the ability to quickly turn a factory into something else in a matter of days. So what happened was your wedding dress suppliers, the people who make shoes, people who make jewelry, people who make coats and jackets, they turned themselves into mini factories for masks. So those very same suppliers that I was talking to for the Sparkle Market, for Jelana Marie Bridal, for the China Connect, they became little PPE shops, if you will. So they were able to produce millions of masks per day. So I always know I need to order some samples. So I quickly ordered samples. I was happy with the quality of the samples. I became a mask expert almost overnight. So I knew exactly what to look for. That ambition that we talked about a little bit earlier, that all of us have, you just have to find the right thing to activate it within you. That kicked in, and there was some sacrifice too, because as you know, the kids are home. I was up so many late nights talking to vendors and researching masks. So that supply chain quickly came together just based off of who I already knew, the fact that all of these individually owned factories were now becoming mass factories. It was kind of easy to find suppliers, but the process of finding the right one took a little while, but it was just a sourcing project condensed into like saying a 6-month sourcing project condensed into a matter of like 6 days.
Wow. So just so everyone really understands that sacrifice, you had to do your research, right? So you didn't just say, I want to get PPE. You had to actually get PPE that met a certain criteria or met the needs of the public to make sure that you're selling a quality product. Mm-hmm. Then you had to order samples so you could test and see. That's also for packaging, because I have products for my summit. And so this year, if we're new to products, right? So this is the first time that we really are offering products or expanding our product offering. So I order the products myself, just like I'm a customer, because I want to see what the packaging looks like, which is what Jelana did. Wants to see what the packaging looks like so you can have that real customer experience yourself. Then you want to know how long does it actually take for things to get to you from the time someone pays you their money, because that's what customers care about, right? Jelana, right. Is the time you pay your money to the time that they actually get their product, and then what the communication in between those two transactions actually looks like, right? And then she wanted to make sure that the quality of the product was up to her standards, or if she could have them make some adjustments. Is that right? Can you tell us what that looks like? Oh, and lots of late nights. You've got to be willing to spend some money, and you've got to be willing to spend some time. And sometimes it's going to be more of one and less of the other.
Exactly.
Right. But what we can tell you, though, as business women, is this. If you spend a lot of the time on the front end, as time goes on, you'll spend less money. Right, Jelana?
Exactly. Yes, exactly. One of the things I always love to say, as busy as we are, is if you don't have time to do it right the first time, you'll never find time to go back and do it right again. So as eager as I was, as, you know, as eager as I was to get started and as anxious as I was to get product in, I couldn't risk having a product come in that wasn't worth reselling. And God forbid I send out something that isn't reflective of the quality that I want to have associated with my company. So yes, that period of time, I just had to pump the brakes and test and sample everything out. And then you mentioned something else that was important too, is knowing when you're jumping into something like this, you have to know the FDA certifications, you have to know the custom standards and the different procedures and compliance ways that you have to, these products have to meet different compliance policies. So that took a while to understand and to make sure that those products that were coming in labeled as PPE really were worthy of protecting us from this virus. So yeah, it took a lot of late nights, and we still have a lot of late nights. And I also too want to mention this. Addie, hush your mouth, hush. I do want to mention this too. So it hasn't been all, oh, purchase the product, it comes in and it's sold and we're rolling in the dough. I really wish that was the story. You know, with the sheer volume of PPE that's coming into the country, there has been a huge backlog of PPE, which has caused a lot of delays. There is a price hike that we're seeing as suppliers, and it's causing us to have to raise our prices. And there's the concern of price gouging. So you have to make sure your prices aren't considered price gouging by the Attorney General, but you can't lose money in this enterprise. So there's just a lot of things that we're having to manage and mitigate. And as you mentioned, Sherica, the communication to customers has been extremely, extremely critical, because so many items across the board, across all companies, are delayed in some way. So, and that has an impact too on your bottom line, because you've got to wait now. You got to decide, do you wait to ship your items once they come in, or do you ship people their items that you have in stock? So that's 2 times shipping costs that you're going to incur. So
yeah, and who's going to absorb those costs? Are you going to absorb those costs yourself, or are you going to do what we like to call back-end? At least that's what I call the back-end cost. Am I going to go ahead and include that cost into my markup so that a customer thinks that they're saving on the shipping, or am I going to separate it from the actual cost of the product so you just be able to see the shipping? So that's something that you also have to think about. And then as you are surveying the external market, you need to see what your competitors are doing, because you don't want to be too far off from them, because this isn't like obviously what she is going to be selling or what any other PPE provider is going to sell isn't going to have the luxury price tax on it like a Louis Vuitton would do if they make a mask, right? And we do have some luxury for designers that are making them, but you want to be comparable to those who are in the same, targeting the same audience that you're targeting. So, Joanna, you did all of this. Walk us through. So you found that there was a need for this information. You did your research. You ordered your samples. But before you started placing these bulk orders, how did you identify who your potential customers would be? Because you weren't thinking about just selling one-offs. That's just one side. You're selling to big businesses like St. Jude, if I could say that. Big customers. So how did you sort of determine who your clients would be and if there was an appetite for this?
Well, so the anticipating whether there's an appetite, this was actually a matter of timing more so than hedging my bets on whether there would be a demand. I kind of already figured there would be a demand. I didn't know there would be such a shortage of PPE in the medical community, though. Never could have anticipated that. But I knew that there would be a need for individuals and people who normally would not need PPE, like churches and daycares and the police department. I didn't anticipate it being doing business on that level, but it quickly got to that level because like we say, we're entrepreneurs. So we look at the landscape, and anytime you're looking at the landscape, you're selling a product, always, always, always never narrow your sales channel to just individuals. Now, you sell to businesses at a discounted rate. Yes, you do. You make a little bit less margin. However, diversifying your sales channel is absolutely the way to go when you're looking at something like this, because what's going to happen in 8 months for individuals? Maybe 70% of people aren't even going to care to wear a mask anymore, right?
Yeah, no, I'm not going to be ordering masks anymore once we're past this, but I always keep a supply of gloves. And so now you're right. I'm always going to think about that, but your businesses and hospitals and churches, they're going to need this forever.
Exactly.
Forever.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that was part of our strategy when thinking about how do we make this a sustainable business long term? How do we create a pipeline of business? How do we get in the door, with businesses that aren't really looking for companies who sell PPE? So that was just all part of our strategy.
That's good. And something that I'd like to note, if you are a woman on this call, because we do have some fellas joining us, but if you are a minority, and minority is, it could be a woman, you could be any ethnic group as a minority, or you can be a locally owned small business. It's very important. Small businesses, as we've all learned, defined by the CARES Act, is if you earn, less than $30 million a year? Don't quote me on that, but it's several millions of dollars a year that makes you under several $1 million a year. So by and large, for most people, this is a safe zone. I say that because you will be able to do business with hospitals, with the federal government, with churches, with municipalities, with school systems, quasi-governments, all of those things. It's important that you get your certifications. Get your minority certifications, get your woman-owned business certifications, get your locally owned small business certifications, get your disadvantaged business certifications. I have all of those certifications, not just on a city level, on a national level, on a state level, because some of them are free, some of them cost money, because they have set aside for those designations. And so that means Jalona will get favored to win certain business and certain contracts because they get points, or they set aside in their budget to spend a certain amount of money with those businesses, the types of businesses that I've just named. So that helps her compete against the big suppliers. And also, if the big suppliers want to go out after some of these contracts, they also have what we call the small business set aside, where they have to meet a certain target. Like, I've been contacted by several businesses who want to bid on PPE before I knew Joanna, but this real story before I knew her. But they contacted me and they wanted to bid on contracts, but they needed a minority business owner to be able to meet the 20% set aside. So I did essentially no work, but I made money because I was certified, and they looked in the database and I was a certified business and I had all the other criteria. And so that's something for you to also be thinking about. You have to use every advantage to your opportunity. I mean, every advantage to your opportunity, every opportunity to your advantage.
Right.
Let me say that wrong. Every advantage to your opportunity and leverage those things in that way so you can make money today, but you can continue to make money and passively create streams of income. You don't want to have to be working hard all the time. The goal is to eventually, or at least a part of your strategy should be, how can you make money when you're not even trying? And she sleeps and people are over there ordering. You know how I know? Because sometimes I order in the middle of the night, or I send people to her site in the middle of the night, and it's an automated process. And if you guys have questions, you should be dropping those in our Q&A. So, Joanna, that's a perfect segue. So how did you sort of overcome any concerns before COVID-19 with working with a foreign company? And for those of you who just joined us late, Jalana's been doing this for more than 10 years. She's been working with countries in Asia, in Vietnam, in China, all of these places, all over that continent, right? All over the continent of Asia. So she's been doing this for a long time, sourcing products internationally. So Joanna, how did you overcome sort of concerns about now getting these new products with, is my product going to come to me now and it's going to be infected with the virus? How did you sort of overcome those things?
Right. So as I said, my method or my approach when it comes to answering questions is to answer them before they get asked. And through the podcast, through my newsletters, through social media posts, I was answering those questions really even before people started asking them. And when you lead with authority in that way, it just gives people a sense of reassurance and a sense of confidence, because you're not trying to hide anything. You're being completely and totally transparent. And because on that particular question, I'm not a medical professional, and I can't say, well, Jalona says you don't have anything to worry. I looked at what the professionals and what the medical community was saying. So in every single post or every single communication about, should you worry about the coronavirus on your products, or can the coronavirus travel? I always linked the CDC and the WHO Q&A website, because they were answering those questions early on as well. So everything that I was saying was backed up by science. It was backed up by the World Health professionals. So that too gave customers the sense that A, I wasn't just making anything up, trying to get people to still buy stuff. And B, I had done my research, and that they could trust me. They could respect what I was saying because I gave them the links to go see it for themselves. So even now, so we are, 4 or 5 months into the pandemic, just from when it first started, there is still no evidence that the coronavirus can survive on a package for longer than a few hours. Even if it does live longer than a few hours, let's just say the package got wet, and the coronavirus, of course, is carried in respiratory droplets. Even if it does, by the time your package reaches you after being on a plane in the cargo area, or even coming to you by sea, you're looking at 5 to 6 days, maybe even 30 by the time it actually reaches your doorstep. So that virus cannot survive in an airborne state for longer than a few hours. And again, to validate and verify this on your own, you can check the CDC and the WHO's website. So I was always just really careful about answering those kinds of questions. And honestly, if the answer wasn't good, the answer just wasn't that good. And it didn't bode well for me in getting, people over the fear of importing from China. But I say it is what it is, and I can't be anything but honest. I can't be anything but transparent. Anything less than that doesn't serve my customers. It doesn't serve me as an individual. So I just go with the facts. I guess the shortest way to say it, I just go with the facts. Yep.
I like it. Again, back to the research and doing your due diligence. You've got to be willing to do and spend the required amount of time. And Joanna made a very, very important statement earlier. If you aren't willing to do it on the front end, you will never find time to go back and do it right later in the process. So you make sure that you do that. So Joanna, what about language barriers? What about those folks who are concerned about establishing relationships with people that speak English as a second language or not speak it very well? And so how have you navigated those concerns?
Absolutely. That's great question. So we live in a time where being an entrepreneur and being an international entrepreneur has never been easier. It has never been more simple. The only thing that separates us from the suppliers in China is a 12-hour time difference. That is the only thing. I love to use technology to translate for me. When we go and we're there on site, you don't always want to have to use your apps to translate. So I bring translators with us. They're part of our group. But just if you're from your computer trying to establish these relationships, Alibaba, if you start there, they have a translator built into their messaging system. So, and it translates, I would say, about 98% accuracy. If you're using any of the two major apps that vendors are on, which is WeChat and WhatsApp, The message itself may come across in Chinese, but there is a translate option within the app. All you do is press it and it automatically translates it into English. That accuracy is about maybe 70%, but you can still get the point. You can still do business that way. So even in email, if a supplier isn't on WeChat, WhatsApp, or Alibaba and it's email only, Google has a translator within its email platform, and they translate beautifully. So there really isn't a language barrier. And then I'll give you one more tip and resource if you're wanting to do business, but you don't quite trust technology. You don't really know if the tech will do the job. You can hire a translator. You can hire somebody for about $8 an hour, even less sometimes, on Fiverr, Upwork, Freelancer. You can just say, hey, I need you to translate for me. You can have them call your suppliers with you on the phone. Now you're up maybe at 1 or 2 a.m., but there's all kinds of ways to get around the language barrier. But if you are comfortable with tech, there's free ways to do it, and it works beautifully.
Well, thank you so much. That's good information. Now let's talk about the money part. How do you get to the contracting? How do you ensure that you get paid, that the deliverables are as stated? Because we know that there is no, some people may be concerned about the law, business laws in America are different than the laws in China. And so there is a concern about that. So can you talk to us about how do you get through the legalities and how do you make sure you get paid?
Absolutely. So if you are a DIYer and you're just wanting to import or just start dipping your toe in the water, as I said, Alibaba is a wonderful place to start, as well as DHgate. And you can put both of those in the chat window. Alibaba.
What's it? Alibaba or
Alibaba.
DHgate?
DH.
Gate? G-A-T-E?
Mm-hmm. G-A-T-E. And both of those platforms understand that individuals are coming from all parts of the country. So they have what's called verified suppliers. They have seller protection. So when you pay your money, as long as you stay within those platforms, they hold your money in escrow until either the item ships or the item is inspected and you give the okay for your money to be released. So for a beginner, like I said, staying within those platforms is really the best way to go. Now, if you're doing business outside of China, say Vietnam, which is where we're sourcing most of our PPE from, Vietnam suppliers, they can't be paid through Alibaba. So a lot of that has to be done through bank transfer, which can't be undone. However, most of them will accept PayPal. And if you're just starting out, if you have a supplier that can't be paid through those platforms, PayPal is your next best option. And if they say, oh, we can't accept PayPal, then you walk away. There is no product worth you losing any amount of money, even if it's just $50. $50 can buy you a whole lot of stuff in China. I never want to lose money. I have never lost money, as a matter of fact, over all of the years, because I always demand that I pay through a way that protects me as well as the seller. But just to go a step further, if you're thinking about a large scale project where you're going to spend $10,000 to get some planners produced, or perhaps you're getting an item made to sell on Amazon, there are ways that you can protect your IP, your intellectual property. There are ways that you can be protected with your money can be protected as well. So again, you can hire a lawyer from several different sites, international lawyers, to draw up contracts. There are also contracts that you can purchase. The key thing though with contracts that they have to be in Chinese in order to be upheld by a Chinese court. Hopefully no one ever gets to a point where they've got to sue a manufacturer, but that's just another level. So say if you're wanting to invest and you've got this large scale project, even if you never intend on suing, perhaps you don't even have a lawyer, you can present a basic contract in Chinese, and that in your supplier's eyes says to them, we are dealing with a pro and we better not mess over her or mess over him, because she's got this contract, even if you never intend on using it. It's kind of like the lawyer letter, you know, that makes us all act right. So there are ways that you can protect your money, but just going back to where most of us probably are, starting on those platforms, staying within those platforms. When you send your money, use the platform that's provided. You pay maybe 2 to 3, maybe 4% more to use their platform, but it's totally worth it for the peace of mind and to know that your money is safe until you get your products in hand.
That's so good. Well, so let's shift now to your China Connect business, where you all don't have to go this alone. If you want to do products, if you want to learn how to do this internationally, get on the front line, see how Jalona does this. Tell us about when the world reopens up and everything is back to safe for us to travel internationally. Tell us about what your China Connect trips look like. Walk us through that.
Yay, they are the most fun in the world. As I said, I'm extremely ambitious. Yes, we know that. I love that about myself, but that also means I work really hard. It also means I love to play really hard, and I don't believe in the drudgery of business only. So our trips are a really good mix of business exposure, business outcomes, and deliverables, but I also want to know what foods you like. I also want to know if you love karaoke, if you're down to try some Chinese soul food while we're there. Do you want to go, have a night at the bar? I mean, and we integrate all of that into our tours. We travel with the #1 airline for China, so we're all about comfort. We are all about the experience. We travel by private transportation, although we do take a taxi and get on the subway one day because I believe everybody should have that experience. But our team, we basically are your concierge, and we design the itinerary based on your business goals, the products that you need to see. And we do this as a group. So in our next tour, which will likely be March of next year, we're going to go to, so I also have projects that I take you along with me as I work on these projects throughout the week. So I'm working on getting a vitamin supplement developed specifically for women who've had babies. And I will take you along with me on that. In that factory, they produce gummies and vitamins and all kind of health edibles and things like that. So you'll get to see that process. You'll also get to see other people's processes. So that's, to me, the biggest benefit of going with a group is the exposure, the connections you make with other entrepreneurs, but the exposure to how business is done in all of these different areas and how easy it is to make money in so many different areas. So we just have a good time. Our primary goal, like I said, is to make sure that your business goals and outcomes are achieved and that you have fun doing it.
Wow. So you all know you need to start saving your coins now. What can you give us the approximate cost? We know inflation, the market changes. So this is just an estimate. How long are the trips in terms of days? How long is the flight? And approximately how much does it cost?
Okay, so we pack our trips full of value. The primary values being, we of course organize the entire travel piece, the plane ticket, the lodging, all the transportation. We handle getting your Chinese visa processed. That price is included in the price of the trip. Most business trips, you have to go it alone to get your Chinese visa. We handle all of that for you. There is dinner sprinkled out throughout the week. Lunches, we just handle everything for you so that you're not coming out of pocket much of anything else beyond things that you want to buy for samples and things of that nature. The trip is 9 days long. Yep.
Okay.
We leave on a Saturday and come back the following Sunday. And typically we leave from Chicago or Atlanta, because if any of you are from Memphis, you know, leaving out of Memphis is crazy expensive in terms of international flights. So we leave out of Chicago, and we're in premium business class when we fly. So just a lot of cool little perks. And the shipping of your items back home, we help you do that. We help you pay for some of the samples that you get from the factories that we set up your trips with. The cost of the tour for March of 2021 is $6,000. And like I said, that covers so many other things that I didn't mention. It also includes 6 months of support after you get back, because that's when the real work starts, is once you get back and once you start working on your projects, once you start identifying the businesses you want to start or the products you want to import. What about the custom fee? What about the harmonization code? How do you figure all of that out? So we help you 6 months post the tour, which to me, beyond connecting with suppliers that could be potentially 70% cheaper than what you're paying now, is having a team in place there in China and here in the US that you can depend on to help you navigate the waters and the challenges that you'll no doubt come up against when you're importing products.
So let's be clear, it's $6,000. It takes care of your Chinese visa. It takes care of your lodging. It takes care of your transportation. It takes care of your concierge. It takes care of 6 months afterwards support to get you set up. It's an entire program that is geared towards making sure you meet your business needs. She's going to take you on a walk along with her inside factories that are producing products for her. We've already talked about the number of businesses she has. She does custom designer bridal gowns. She also does other products as well. She does health gear, personal protective equipment. So she has a lot of products she's developing, vitamins. So anything that you have, she will be able to help you be able to navigate. And I've put all of her information in the chat. We want you to follow her and all of those things. If you want to learn more, you do consultations, right?
Oh, absolutely. You can go to thechinaconnect.com and submit a form. There's a contact us form where you can just submit your information, schedule your consultation. It's all automated. So as soon as you contact us, we get you in our funnel, we get you in our system, and we connect you with the right service. We've got vendor services, all kinds of ways that we can help you, because coming to China may not be the best fit for everyone right away, but perhaps you're wanting to get the most bang for your buck. So we definitely connect you with the right service at the right time. But yes, thechinaconnect.com is the place to go to get started.
Sounds good. Well, Jalona, it has been a pleasure having you today. It has been a pleasure. I am so excited about this. Ladies, I hope that you all have enjoyed this information. There's no other place where you can get this type of information to help you learn how to get your business up and going. If you're thinking about now importing products, how to grow your business, this is the place to get this information. You should definitely be connecting with Jalona. And you see up on your screen now that I have a 20 for 20. I serve on the Women United board for the United Way. And we are running this campaign with Jalona's products, by the way, where we're doing 20 for 20. This benefits the Salvation Army. They need protective equipment to be able to continue to serve our public and our underprivileged populations, but we want them to be protected as they do it. So for $20, we can get 20 masks, and for every purchase, Jalona makes a donation herself to the United Way. So it's giving back 2 times. It's tax deductible for you, so that's what's in it for you. We're giving masks to the folks on the front lines at the Salvation Army, and Jalona is giving out of her own personal pocket. She's giving money directly to the United Way. So you can feel good about it, and you're going to get a tax deduction. So we hope that you've enjoyed this. Jalona, it's been a pleasure having you on. This conversation has been invaluable for me. Ladies, if you're not signed up for the Total Woman Summit newsletter, you want to get signed up and continue to learn about what we have in the pipeline. You can do that at TotalWomanSummit.com. Make sure you're following us, and immediately following this conversation, you're going to get a pop-up survey. Complete that. We'd love to hear your feedback, and we'll be sure to share that with Jalona. For those of you that will be on with us tonight at 7, we're looking forward to seeing you then. Thank you all so much. Have a lovely afternoon.
Thanks all. Thanks for having me.